Five, four, three, two, one. Hey there, spiritual dope. This is your host with the voice of a generation, Brandon Hanley, and I'm on today with the Adam Walton. Adam, what are you running these days, man? Where should I, even if I just say it, I think I know you best as the Mental Mastery, but I believe you're the Mental Mastery Alliance now.
I've always been the Mental Mastery Alliance.
Yes. So there you go. I know Adam as he's one of my first coaches. Adam's actually the person that gave me that line that I just threw out at you at the beginning there, the voice of a generation. Without Adam, you would not have the voice of a generation. Did you know that, Adam? I think you did that, right?
I did kind of know that, yeah, but I mean the reality is they would have the voice of a generation because, my friend, you still exist.
Sure.
And you were partially there. I just figured, why not glorify it? And that's it's 100% sure. Like, you really have to envision what you want. And just like anyone that's getting started on anything that's new, it's really hard to believe in yourself. So when you start announcing yourself as the voice of a generation, you live up to your monikers. You really step into that power. So it's not like you have to, slow it down or play small. When you are the voice of a generation, which you currently are right now, you stepped right into it.
100%. I love it. I always like to say that, and I it's funny, every time I say this, I always expect somebody to send something to me, but nobody's ever said that I can't be the voice of a generation, right?
You've also never specified which generation, so all the haters can beat it.
Get the hell out. So Adam, I usually like to start this with a fun one, right? The idea is that the universe, God, whatever, speaks through us, right? And somebody listening to this podcast right now is going to get a message that can only be delivered through source, through Adam Walton to them. What is that message?
Do more. Simply put, do more. No matter what you're doing right now, do more. And that's the one piece of advice that will get you from where you are to where you need to be. If you there's a statement when you have a job, when you work for somebody, when somebody's hired you to complete their tasks, always deliver more than is expected. And when you do that, you change the way you operate sequentially. You change the way you operate mentally. You change the way you operate physically and spiritually. If you're saying, I am tasked to do this thing, then that is the limitation you've put on yourself. That is what you will do, and you will do a basic job of it. When you do more than is expected, you'll always amplify, in other words, your tasks. You'll amplify your output. And when you amplify your output, you feel it internally. So without trying to seek praise from anyone or anything, anywhere, other than how you feel about yourself, always do more.
I mean, I think it's a pretty powerful message. What's a good example of that? Because I think that I know that for myself, historically, it's like do more. It's like do more of what and how, right? What would you tell somebody do more looks like?
Well, just like you said, do more of what and how. If you're going to take up the moniker of doing more, and then you ask yourself, what more can I do? Well, now you've got to give yourself an answer. And when you do, you execute on doing more. So simply by asking the question, you effectively done more. Also, when you're on that line of thought, you have the ability to create more. And there are so many times, and I'll tell you this, just like the more you try to push into anything and the more you try to do something positive, you're going to get a pushback, a naysayer, anything. Because if you've decided at this moment in time that you're going to step into your purpose, for example, know that if you've not started this journey, you are starting from the beginning. But the beginning is a little bit into the race. And into the race, you're still in the crowd. And that crowd is of people you joined a race with that wasn't your race to begin with. So the people that will say the negative things, or the people that will get inside your mind, are the people you associated with before you became, I would say, aware, before you became self-aware, before you became spiritually aware, before you started this journey. And on this path, on this journey, you are going to unload these people one by one so that you can make room for the new people that are in this journey on this path with you. It's not a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It is merely an experience. So embrace all of the negativity, embrace all of the uncertainty, because it is those uncertain moments and it is those negative moments that create the positive you 5 years from now, 1 year from now, next week.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you can look at an event or an experience that's coming into your life right now as a negative right now. Like, you say, hey, this negative, COVID, right? You just had, what'd you have, your gallbladder taken out? What'd you have?
My gallbladder tried to kill me.
Right.
Without,
So,
yes.
yeah, and I think if you were telling me, we connected a couple weeks back, and you said that you just came out of the hospital, and I think I asked you, I said, well, were you? It was your back, and weren't you laid out for about a year or so with your back as well, correct? Is that right?
So what happened with me on the back part was when I really stepped into my purpose, the world without my own desire or anything slowed me down, basically put me in bed for a year. That gives you time to think.
It sure does. But talk to me a little bit about going through that. And before we even got fired up here, I think when you and I first connected, I wouldn't have put you, I think, in the spiritual journey space. You may have been on your way, right? But somewhere along the way, you and I both kind of started sprinting or running towards this spirituality bit. Where did you get like this kind of fever or the bite?
When you and I first met, I wasn't allowed to be myself based on contracts negotiated at the time. I was a entity of another unit. So my spirituality started when I was born. I never fit in. I was never part of the third dimension. I was never somebody who looked at something and agreed with the television, agreed with the narrative, agreed with getting a job. I questioned everything since birth, and it's been referred to as a fourth dimensional entity. I arrived here as a fourth dimensional entity. You don't know what that means, obviously, because when you live in the third dimension, you have to look at all this shit that doesn't make any sense, but you have to look at it all. Now, when you and I crossed paths, I was living my best life. As a sales coach and as somebody who had the ability to see into people's souls, I utilized both skills. Coaching was coming naturally next. And the dark night of the soul is the main thing that pushes people into the next reality. I've gone through probably about 4 of them in the past 3 years where I've been forced to deal with myself. So when you step into purpose, when you step into your ascension, your light, your journey, your reason for being here, a lot of other bullshit disappears. A lot of stuff that is not necessary goes away. And what I find entertaining about that moment is everybody has this preconceived notion of what a spiritual person is. And I don't live up to any of those preconceived notions. I come from a very cruel background. I come from a ruthless background, to be honest. And it's been said that you need to be capable of evil to be able to spread positivity, to be able to be capable of pure positivity, because anyone can be nice, but to be capable and understanding, there must be a contrast. So anyone can be something, but if you're truly capable of evil and you choose against it, or you learn from it and it creates a new, then that's an entirely different state than saying, I believe that we should all be a certain thing. That's a very controversial statement. If you want me to unpack it more, I can. But for the most part, there's one meme that I absolutely adore, and it says, don't let the spirituality confuse you. There's gangsta under here. And a lot of people.
100%, right? Like, I don't know that. I think the contrast is necessary, right? I wouldn't say personally, look, from my vantage point, I wouldn't say you'd have to know evil to know good, right?
You do.
But
Because at the same time, you have to know, and this is a really valid point, because you have to know light to understand darkness. So on that note, when I say you have to know evil, I'm not saying that everyone's evil, but I am saying that the most spiritually enlightened people I've ever met have lived through some shit.
sure. Look, man, there's no doubt, right? Like, I don't think that, but, my personal take is I don't think that, again, there's no preconceived notion, right? It comes from anywhere. You can get it anywhere. You can get it like, it can happen in any way, right? And that's the beauty of it. So I definitely appreciate,
No, you'd be right on that one. Yeah.
yeah, I appreciate your journey, right? So I mean, tell us a little bit about like, let's talk a little bit about like this, the Adam Walton that I met, right? The Adam Walton that I first met, it's his coach, life coach. The stories, you've had some success, throughout your life. You built it all on your own, and then the Adam Walton I first met, even though it was like kind of a package deal. um, to me, it seemed, seemed genuine, right? Seemed all
Always
genuine.
was.
Yeah,
Always
always
was.
genuine. Yeah, always genuine. But the Adam Walton that I feel like I know now is just more expansive, shall we say, right? And I think that that's a good phrase for it, right? There's a different, you said fourth dimension, no being, and I think that there is there are multiple new dimensions about you. So let's talk about like that transition over the past like 3 years and what's happened.
Perfect. When I was referring to earlier, it leads into this. When you find when we were okay. So when I was talking about evil, evil versus good. Again, the contrast. Every single thing is contrasts. You don't know heat unless you know cold. You don't know light unless you know dark. The yin to the yang. This idea of who you are at any given moment is only compared to who you were. And when you are somebody who, has gone through certain experiences and has been talked to and dealt with a certain way, you have certain notions of who you are. And based on that, you have certain notions of where you think you can go. Spirituality and how it compounds is by taking those extremes. My journey specifically, not, everybody's got a different path, but my journey specifically was taking those extremes and experiences and viewing them as teaching moments rather than painful experiences that I wish I never lived. If I go back through my life and if I go back through my experiences, every last one of them formed who I am. And who I am is amazing right now, but nowhere near where I'm going to be in 10 years. And where I'm going to be in 10 years, and that's not me tooting my own horn. I'm not out trying to impress anybody, or I'm not out trying to do anything. I am just simply on a journey for myself. And wherein before it was always nice to, do this, be kind to others and all that sort of stuff. And you think to yourself, it's a good idea to, be kind to other people, for other people. And you're being bombarded with it right now in the media, which is, wear a mask for other people, get vaccinated for other people. Nobody's really questioning the fact that all of this stuff needs to be done for you. And if you raise that point, then you're selfish. And it's interesting that the entirety of the world has decided that we need to think of other people as opposed to focusing in on who we are and what we're capable of. Because first and foremost, with regards to the vaccines and the masks, if you're not wearing a mask, my mask doesn't work, is such bullshit. If you're not going to wear a mask and people in old age homes is going to die, again, bullshit, right? Everything has its own purpose. If I were to walk into an old age home, I would mask up, right? But for me to not be able to have my friends over and then be able to go to Costco, two totally different things. And I'm speaking on this because this is the grand awakening. What we're seeing right now is the veil being pulled. What we're seeing right now is the holes in the story. So every single thing that's ever taken place in my life is now being compared to what's happening in the sandbox, is now being compared to what's happening in the ethos of the realm in which we're all inhabiting. So I am now able to compare my life story to what's being offered to me, to the experience that we're all collectively having a unique experience, which is a very interesting thing that a lot of people can't wrap their minds around. And that's because they're all tied into each other, the third dimension. You're all tied into one another, as opposed to experiencing individuality inside the collective. If you're a Star Trek fan, just picture Seven of Nine or Hugh, if you want to go right back to the Star Trek The Next Generation. Phenomenal things. There's a lot of stuff in Star Trek, actually. They talked about the Dyson sphere as well. Fantastic. A completely different episode. But when it comes down to your spirituality, you are experiencing this world and this realm with your background. Therefore, your background and my background are entirely different. I'm not better than you. You are not better than me. A man who is born into money, to a poor man seems like he's got it all, but he's got his own problems. A man who was born with nothing and no legs or what have you, whatever it is, he's got his experiences. And for you to be like, oh, poor him, that's you implying your experiences onto him. Therefore, you're forcing him to play inside your ethos. It's an interesting reality to understand that we are here to experience individually the collective. And you start off inside the collective, as is your experience for comparison. The only way you can break out of the collective is to understand it exists. The only way you can understand it exists is for it to exist, which then brings back good and evil. If evil is being perpetrated to wake you out of the collective consciousness, and it's an agreed upon contract, i.e. soul contract, something that people can walk into, is evil actually evil, or is the act of evil good because its end result is for you? Now, that's a huge debate. Everybody can have their arguments and their competitive thing. Perfect. But it's a topic that nobody discusses. We look at evil and good as black and white, and it certainly is not.
I mean, look, I like it, right? You got to have, in any hero's journey, you got to have the antagonist, right? There's got to be some type of catalyst. There's got to be some type of obstacle to overcome, right? In order to flourish. Just like, what was I listening to this morning? I forget what it was exactly I was listening to this morning, but, think of a walnut shell, right? I mean, that for that tree to express its life, it's got to do battle with that shell, right? It's got to penetrate and get out of that shell. It's got to reach for the light. And then it's got to, reach to the ground.
But first of all, it's got to know what's inside a shell.
Look, I mean, it's just it's already knows. That's always the beauty, right? Of, the rest of nature outside of human beings, right? A tree, trees, a dog, dogs, humans. We're like, what the fuck is going on? Right. So, and I enjoy your perspective. So just talk a little bit about what led you there again. So, I mean, you're Adam, I wouldn't call it like pre-spiritual, the pre-awakened Adam, I guess we could have, right? And how do you slip into this space?
It wasn't any one thing. Obviously, it was a collection of things. And like I said earlier, being born fourth dimensional, it sounds juju-y, but at the end of the day, I've always viewed things differently. So when I was able to not think I was crazy for viewing things differently, and when I was able to see that the society was trying to give me ADHD and this, that, and the other thing, for me to understand why I was so good at sales, for me to understand why I understood what people needed, I had to dig deeper into myself. And to do so, I encountered more answers to the questions I was asking. The questions were changing, the answers were changing, and they were leading to more questions. The more questions that were being answered, the more questions I had. And then when you stop living fourth dimensional, third dimensional, and you start living fifth dimensional, it is a shift. You go back and forth. You can visit the world fifth dimensionally. So you can see it, but you can't live there because it doesn't make sense, because it's where you're going. It's not where you've been. And it's not anything like where you've been. Fifth dimensional living is understanding. And when you can understand certain things, a lot of shit just goes away. And when that shit goes away, you have so much more room inside yourself to embrace new things. When you stop worrying about, am I going to live? Am I going to die? What if I crash? What if I this? What if I don't make any money? What if it doesn't work out? What if it does work out? What if I do this? What if I do that? When all of those noises leave your head, you can amplify everything that you're doing at the moment that you're doing it. How did I get there? Honestly, I would have to say the leaps all came from dark nights of the soul, all came from going toe to toe with what I believed to be true, entering painful moments. The back, putting me in bed, when you're sleep deprived for over a month and you are faced with chronic pain, you ask certain questions. You change the way you do things. And when you come face to face with your inner demons, whether you want to or not, when you're in that much pain for that long physically, there are people that you meet inside your mind. Dark nights of the soul also come from smaller experiences, also come from putting yourself out, also come from you allowing yourself to have that experience. And collectively right now, the universe is going through a dark night of the soul. And you're seeing an awakening to the illusion. Some of us are, some of us aren't, and there's a lot of questions. I have a lot more questions about where we are now than I did before, before you see what's the world, the game that we're playing, because it's phenomenal. So my spiritual journey is just beginning. I am growing exponentially. I have changed my focus. I no longer need or want what I used to want. Now I want to make a difference. Now I want to make a change. Now I want to have a voice. Now I want to share my message. Now I want to be a guest on your podcast show. Wow, I've always wanted to be a guest on this show. Come on. Have you seen the artwork for this, ladies and gentlemen? Jeez, Louise.
I'll tell you, James knocked it out on that. So sounds a little bit like you're talking about finding your purpose.
Yeah.
And what's that? So what does that mean to you?
Alignment, basically. My purpose isn't anything other than what I need it to be, and my alignment. What's funny is boredom. Boredom goes out the window the minute you start aligning yourself properly. You start finding fascination in all kinds of things. I mean, all kinds of things. Like boredom is just not challenging yourself, and it's really interesting how that plays out. And just this growth, this alignment. How do I not sound like every other person speaking in broad terms? I mean, it's almost impossible not to, because every single person's journey is different, and every single person is allowed to have experiences. And the minute you stop asking if you're having an experience, you understand that you are having an experience. So everyone out there that is experiencing something weird and they want answers, you give yourself those answers. And then when you start believing in yourself, you move in leaps and bounds.
What do you mean by, start believing in yourself?
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think that you can fail?
No.
Did you think that you could fail when I met you?
Yes.
Now, how would you explain that difference? Because you actively right now know that you cannot fail.
It was going through the process, right? We talk about that. It's it's funny. I posted a meme, I think not too long. It's just my own meme. I said, what the fuck is the process?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because people always say, trust the process. And you're like, what the fuck does that mean?
Yeah.
And until you go through the process or a process, I guess, right? It's tough to discern. So that's how I got there, was by trusting the process and going through with it.
That's right. And that's basically, the gist. So when somebody says, when I say to you, I cannot fail, all I can do is have an experience and make a decision about it. Right? The world doesn't get that just yet. There are so many people that are like, explain that, make that, because of course you can fail. I think one of the funniest realizations I ever had was the Yoda saying, do or do not, there is no try.
Sure.
And I was like, for when you're living in third dimension, you're like, of course there's a try. There's try all over the place. You do nothing but try until you do or do not. But the reality is you live in end results. You live in end results. You either do it or you don't do it.
That's the Yoda one and the Matrix, right? Stop trying to hit me and just hit me.
Yeah.
Right.
Stop trying to hit me. Yeah, exactly.
Right. And just hit me. It's real similar to that. So the Dark Nights of the Soul, you kind of went through, and I think one of the things I like to always understand is, now that you've kind of got like this purpose to kind of share your message out, I believe you're still doing, still coaching and, trying to get others to understand what their message is, right? Align with their purpose so that they can go through the process, right? How are you seeing, a leap in fulfillment in your life by living it this way versus what it was before? And is there any way you can kind of compare and contrast that for us?
100%. There's, again, the lack of boredom, all that sort of stuff, comes into it. My purpose in life is to wake up lions. It's not to wake up sheep. It's not to, dismiss them or anything like that. But my purpose in life is to push those that need to be pushed to step into their light, to step into the light of change. And it's not even that I'm doing it for them. I'm doing it because I need to do it. Once that person is awake and once that person is off and running, they no longer have anything to do with me. My purpose was not to get praise from the lion that has now awoken. My purpose was to simply wake that lion up. My purpose was to allow them to understand their purpose a little bit better and to show them that they're not crazy for having that identity. What was I doing while being third dimensional? I was teaching people how to sell. I was teaching people how to close. No matter what realm I lived in, I was always teaching people. And when you live in that realm, you are always under the gun. You're always under attack. And it's really, really interesting because you will find people say the craziest shit about you when you're in the sales room, when they don't even know who you are. But when you exude some sort of energy that they don't have, they want to bring you down. Interestingly enough, that isn't about like you or them or anything. That is the experience. You have to get stronger by understanding that these things are happening so that you can face your own, whatever growth patterns that you have to face. And they have to do it so that they can understand that it's not the right thing to do, that you don't chop somebody down, right? The same debate goes with bullies. A lot of people will talk, how bullying is bad, but bullying teaches the bully a lot, and it teaches the one that's being bullied a lot, and everyone has these experiences. So, it's an interesting jump how I went there, but when you find your purpose, you understand that you are contributing properly in your realm. If your purpose has to do with avenging the weak, maybe you were bullied, and maybe without being bullied, you'd never have lived into your purpose. If you were a bully who turned his life around because he saw how terrible it was for the other people being bullied, and that leads you into your life purpose, go for it. The world and society is so quick to point the finger at so many people about so many things without understanding that usually for the most part, 90% of everyone who's ever perpetrated a crime or whatever is at some point a victim in their own lives, either repeating a pattern or, built up angst or being, trying to take their power back from being a victim, whatever it is. Again, the battle of good and evil, what contrasts for the sake of the other to contrast. So when you talk about stepping into your purpose, if you're a quote unquote bad person, once you understand that that can't possibly be true and that you have the ability to step and move forward, you realize that the third dimension has always tried to make you look at your past and make you compare yourself to who you used to be, as opposed to living in a fourth or a fifth dimension where you compare yourself today to who you want to be. I look at myself today and say, I'm not this person yet. I need to work on that. I need to go through this, and this to get there, and there. But since the entire world, for the most part, is coming from, I'm not this person because I used to be that person, and that person's holding me back from becoming this next person. But that's how you're trained to think. So when the world decides it wants to wake up, like you keep trying to ask me about me, and I keep reflecting back to the world, because I am not the person you're interviewing, even though I sit in this chair. You're interviewing the experience, and I can share my experience, or I can share a perspective of experiences, and you're getting both. And I ramble a lot, but that's okay. People seem to like my voice.
I say what I want.
You're damn straight.
The idea, it's funny, the experience, right? The idea, though, that we experience time or anything else, and knowledge is that is, of course, an illusion, right? What we experience right now is what we're always experiencing, which is, in eternity, right? We're experiencing eternity right now. It's just, how do you want to see it, right? The fulfillment piece, right, is kind of still what I'm getting at, right? Do you feel more fulfillment in general with this kind of wave being?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I have a question for you as well, sir. But the fulfillment, man, honestly, how can I put this? Fulfillment, when you stop doing what they tell you to do, smoking cigarettes, drinking booze, being debaucherous, being an asshole, all the stuff that you've ever been taught to do in life, that small consumption of alcohol, when you put it all aside and you realize that you're so much more than what they told you to be, fulfillment's massive. It's absolutely massive.
It's huge.
Like, I'm assuming that you haven't picked up a drink in years. Like, when you put it down, you never went back to it.
Yeah. I'm the happiest I've ever been.
Yeah.
Since childhood, I'd have to say, right?
And a lot of that is tied into you aligning, not you quitting drinking. Quitting drinking was a result of alignment. Look at our mutual friend.
Well, Jeremy, but it goes back to what you were saying though, Adam. I called forth the person I wanted to be versus maintaining the image of who I was. I said, hey, you know what? This isn't who I want to be going forward.
That's right.
This does not, align to who I want to be going forward. Who I want to be going forward has all of these capabilities, and one of the capabilities is the strength to say, I don't want to drink and I don't want to hang out with everybody else and do the same things everybody else is doing. I want to be doing what I want to be doing on my own terms.
Mm-hmm. And you did it.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much how simple it is.
It is.
And there are so many people out there that'll say, oh, addiction is this. How many times have I heard 1,000 people say quitting alcohol is one of the most painful and hard things to do? I was a seasoned drinker and I stopped.
Right.
And then you know what they say? Well, that's you. That's not everybody. And I say, I can only speak from my experience. That's right. Your experience, and anyone that says it's hard is typically somebody who hasn't gone through it. Yeah. Or typically somebody who went through it the hard way and didn't decide to look at it the easy way. I.e. quitting
they probably didn't look at it for themselves. They probably didn't look at it. They did it for somebody else. They didn't do it for themselves.
You're right. There's a book out there called The Alan Carr, The Easy Way, and that is how to quit smoking. And I was a smoker. When I met you, I was also a cigarette smoker. I'd smoked a pack a day for years. It was disgusting. But when I was a kid, it's just what you did. Where I grew up, where I came from, you smoked cigarettes. The cool kids wore leather and smoked cigarettes. Cigarettes are now ridiculous, and there's no more leather stores. And it's also faux pas to wear the skin of another animal. And when you think about that shit, it is a bit peculiar wearing leather. Anyway, my alignment, my journey, and all that sort of stuff is bringing me to where I want to be. And that is, I'm fully able to defend my position. I also don't speak my position to the most part. I don't find it's necessary for me to communicate with anyone that may or may not understand me. I will talk to everybody on their level. I will answer any question that anybody has. And for the most part, I do my best to allow people to simply be. And you'll find in that sense too, that people will interact with you a certain way and they will like you or they won't like you, no matter how enlightened or experienced you are. There is an energy working in congruent with, everything, where magnetically we're all aligned or attracted. There are times where you can take a magnet and you can pick up other magnets, and that same magnet will push off other magnets. If you just lay out a ton of scattered magnets, some will pick up and some will drop off. That's humanity, right? And if you flip a magnet that picked up, it'll push off as well. So you're not necessarily aligned with everybody at all times, but for the time that you are aligned, go for it. Have your fun, do your thing. But to have any expectations much more than that is foolish. If you want to grow with somebody, do it. If you want to grow through people, do it. Don't hold anyone accountable to them living up to your expectations or fitting into your narrative and your reality. Grow and see who grows with you. And see who you grow into and see who you meet on your growth journey. Because the alternative is to sit in front of the television when you're not at work. And that to me is in bullshit. Because There's so much more to everything than what they've allowed us to be. The typical third dimensional person is somebody who is dating somebody they don't want to date, at a job they don't want to work at, not making as much money as they want to make, living in a house they don't want to live in, addicted to alcohol and not even realizing it. That's your standard third dimensional individual or entity. Anyone asking the question or trying to step out of that is drifting into fourth dimension. And anyone that's actuating and visualizing and making real what the secret tried to make, money off. When you try to make that real, when you live in visualization and when you live in actualization, you've stepped right out of it. Because here's another thing too. When you're living in third dimension, you are experiencing everything you've put the effort into experience. Therefore, everything that you have is a result of your physical actions towards the manifestations that you've created. You are living in the result of the effort that you've put in at any stage of life, basically.
Are you saying that the third dimension is the result of like physical activity, and the fourth and fifth are the result of other activities?
No, they're all mental. So the third dimension is not thinking for yourself. The fourth dimension is asking questions. The fifth dimension is believing.
I like that. The third dimension is not thinking for yourself. The fourth is
asking questions.
And the fifth is
believing in yourself. Believing
in yourself. And when you're saying believe in yourself, you're not talking about the confidence to do something and like go climb a mountain. Believe in yourself.
Sure, why not?
I don't know. Or would I don't know.
Can you pick up a car right now?
I mean, the theory says yes, right?
The theory does say yes. But what if I said to you, Brandon, I'm going to give you 1 year. Do whatever you have to do. But at the end of that 1 year, I want to see you on this exact day next year. You're going to pick up a car. You can do that. And if everything is happening all at the same time, then by the time 1 year rolls around, you and I are going to be standing face to face on the side of a car. It'll be a look car, like a 1987 look car, so it won't be too hard. I'm not going to
look car.
I'm not going to push your buttons too hard.
There you go.
And exactly, yeah. So you just pick that up, right? But you've hit the gym, you've done the training, you've understood, you've learned, you've taken in the knowledge, and you've picked up the car. But as it stands right now, not a chance.
Well, that's where the thing is, that right? So I mean, you always got to wonder.
That's manifestation. That is 100% manifestation. In the realm that we live in, it takes a minute to go from here. I'm pointing at my brain, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know if he's going to use the video for this. I'm pointing at my brain from here, to tangible.
Right.
That belt behind me on the wall. Before I had that belt, I wanted it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then what did I do? I earned some money. I called a guy. A shipping company picked it up. It came here. I manifested that belt and created it.
Sure.
Anything that you want in this world, you create.
Right.
You create it. Now, the thing is, we think we want things because we've seen them on TV. Imagine what you could create if you could tap into source directly. Like, holy shit, I want that Gurgenslog. I don't know, right?
I don't even know what that is, but go ahead.
Exactly. And then you just manifest it. And everyone's like, what the fuck is that? And you're like, it's a Gurgenslog, you son of a bitch. You want it because you have never seen one before.
Right.
Right. But the minute your neighbor sees your Gurgenslog, he's going to figure out what it is and he's going to get one, make one, do one,
sure.
get one.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So we grew up at a time too where, bro, you and I probably didn't have the coolest car in the parking lot, but we had a car in the parking lot when we were in high school. Right?
Yeah.
We didn't have parents' money, but we had our efforts. We pushed what we had and we believed where we were. So we actuated based on what we believed.
Well, so I want to, so I'm going to jump in here, right? There's two things. One thing is like, all right, well, when you said, can you lift up a car? And, the working theory is that I could do it today based on, kind of what we've seen before, just out of the idea of like, a
mother's strength,
when a mother's strength type of thing, right?
Exactly. I mean, of course, yeah.
But because I don't believe right now in myself enough to do the thing.
Tapping in the matrix, 100%. Now you're talking like sixth and seventh dimension, because there are people that have done feats of strength on a regular basis. Right. And there are also myths and stories, and these people just tap into source, immediately tap into source. If somebody is trapped under a car, I guarantee you can pick that car up.
Sure.
Because the physics go out the window. Again, the matrix, just don't bend the spoon.
And then I think that then there's there's the necessity that says, hey, you need to be able to do this. So source allows that to open for you, right? Yeah,
Right.
provides that for you. And then the other part, and this was a really eye-opening moment. This was a conversation you and I had. Geez, Adam, I think it was a year ago. Driving around, and I was just leaving my real estate class, and I was talking to you about this teacher who was in there, who was teaching motivational interviewing, which is something that I was really interested in. I was like, oh man, what are the odds that she's in there, right? What did you say? Do you recall?
She was in there because you needed her to be in there.
But I said, what are the odds? And he said, 100%. Right, the odds are 100%. I was like, motherfucker, you're right, right? And then you said something along the lines of she was in, because that's the only way that you believe that it could happen, type of thing, right? Mm-hmm. So it's you create your life and act upon it in a way that you believe you should be, and that's the only way that it'll happen. So until you change what you believe in and what you believe yourself to be capable of, you won't take any actions towards it, right? Type of thing. And you won't see it, right? I think that's the other part too. Like until you believe, right, you won't be able to see it.
Yeah. I mean, when we talk, if you're right about all that, and as I stutter, if we talk back to the car, right? Mm-hmm. The idea of you being able to pick the car up right now, we agree that it could be done. Mm-hmm. Immediately, but we also agree that it's more likely that you'll be able to do it in a year.
For sure.
Now that being said, for you to be able to tap into source on a regular basis and pick up a car is not the purpose. For you to become the person that understands how to tap into source and to regularly pick up the car is the purpose.
Yeah, I love that.
We are not here to do the thing. We are here to become the person who can do the thing. Mm-hmm. So that's the cool part. How many times too, and maybe this is just me, but every single time I've ever acquired whatever it was I wanted, when I bought the thing, I don't care about it anymore.
Oh yeah.
When I bought my first expensive car, I was like, yay.
That's the journey. Yeah, that's the journey. That's the journey.
So that's life. Life is all about that thing. And now again, the car also, when I bought my first expensive car, I was fully immersed in the idea of the third dimension, how what you have validates who you are, which is total bullshit.
Right.
How you treat yourself.
Again, that's gonna be actually the same conversation this weekend with somebody we visited. Once you have a bunch of money, you realize you don't change. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, it doesn't change who you are inherently. I mean, changes. I think it does change some things, right? It allows you the space to kind of fall into expansion because you're not as worried about the survival mechanism, right? It's not necessary though. That's one thing I always like to point out. Like, so once you have enough money, you stop worrying about that, and you can start exploring some of these other things like spirituality, right?
Well, here's another thing too. If you don't have enough money, right, you get stuck in that rat race.
Right.
But you can also say to yourself, I need more time. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to totally downsize my house. I'm going to take up a job at McDonald's flipping burgers, and I'm going to make sure that my bills are paid and that there's food on the table. And I'm going to spend every waking moment after that focusing on my craft, focusing on my message, focusing on my person, and creating. Mm-hmm. So it's not that we don't have enough message. It's not that we don't have enough money. A lot of the time it's that we don't know how to utilize our moment.
I think you hit on something in there too, right? Creating. Right, spend time creating, and I think that most people would say, when you say, they've got to create, they've got to be an author, they've got to be an artist, they've got to be something else. When you're saying creator, what are you saying?
Create.
Yeah, but I mean, what's that look like? I mean, go into more detail.
Yeah, it's a heavy word. Creating isn't art. Like, a painter isn't creating paintings. A painter is creating himself, herself, themself, itself, we self, whatever junction people want to use these days. A painter is creating, and the result of their creation is art. So somebody who is completely stuck in a job that they hate with a spouse that they don't care for, in a situation they don't want to be in, can start creating that moment by saying, I don't want this anymore. They start creating. The more time you spend creating, the more likelihood you're going to succeed. Just like the more time you spend playing darts, the likelihood is you're going to get better at darts. So creating is becoming, right? And then if you want to paint, if painting is your creation, you start painting. You start with the materials that you have. You pick up a box of crayons and you hammer it out, and you work on your draw, you work on your lines, you work on your dimensions. And then from there, you sell one of those things. You get really good, or you get noticed, or you upload it, or you go on to Fiverr, or you go wherever. The world is completely open to anything that anybody wants to do. You can sell your painting. You can sell a class on how to paint. You can draw. You can do anything. You just have to find out how to get there, how to do it. Right. Whatever it is that anybody wants to do, they just have to do it.
Well, I think that also goes back to, again, what you're saying. You got to believe in yourself, and you got to want to do it, right? You have to believe in yourself, and then kind of take action towards it, right? Even if there's just tiny steps, right?
Yeah.
Sell something on Fiverr. Go to Fiverr. Put yourself out there, right? To be found,
yeah,
right?
Of course.
And believe that. Why not you?
A fun story about Fiverr. I'm on Fiverr, and I went on there and I do writing. I just do short stories. I do blogs. I do written content for coaching pages, and from there I charge peanuts. But every now and again, like just the random stuff that is fun for me to do and takes no time at all, I have some. It's like $30 or $40 a page, right, for 500 words, which like I've undercut everybody. But from there, it's blown people away. When they kind of when they kind of do some research on who I am, like, why would I be on Fiverr? Why would this be a thing? Like, because the perception of who I am is, on the internet a lot bigger than who I am right now. I'm just a dude. That's all I am. But it's funny because from Fiverr, I get paid to practice writing. Right. Because here's the thing, I can write whatever I want, but when you have an idea in your head and you don't believe in yourself or whatever it is, when you're just getting started on any one thing, it's hard for you to be like, I have some ideas and I want to craft. But when somebody says, hey, can you write this, this, and this? These are the things I want to talk about. This is the thing I want to do. Right. Then you're on it. You're like, all right, I got this figured out. And then you go do it. Just like it's easier to help everybody else than it is to help yourself.
No, that's right. And I love that you brought that up.
I want to finish that thought though.
Go ahead.
So from Fiverr, for anyone listening, from anyone jumping out, the real reason I'm there is because it's free advertising. I've acquired 5 people specifically that have gone into my full program from a $5 ad. They've dropped $25K. Right. So you can't judge anything. You can't judge anything on anything. You should just be wherever you need to be to fish wherever you want to fish, to eat whatever you want to eat, and have fun with it, experience it, drop every single idea out of your head that you think is a certain thing and just go and run and be free.
All right. No, that's really cool. I love that. I love that you're doing that, and how, the perspective there, it makes me think about, again, like, kind of podcasting, right? Makes me think of, the idea of when you interview me on your podcast, it's easier sometimes, right? If you're the one asking me the questions, it's easier for me to come up with the answers, because those are some questions I might not answer or think of on my own as valuable content or anything else. But when somebody else asks you a question, it comes out so naturally, right? Just like when you're writing for somebody else asking you to write for them, it's just coming right through.
Mm-hmm. I think that's funny too, because you've been on my show, and it's different in so many aspects, because on this show too, I love doing these shows because it is always me that's steering the show or running this or asking the questions, but I have the opportunity on this show just simply to answer your questions, and I love the creativity, because it's identical. Again, you and I can have a conversation. Right. Your show is your show. My show is my show. Both are a little bit different. My show is certainly a little bit more out there than your show. I like to talk about little green men. I like to be able to expand on every single topic and tie it all back into source, because there is a truth in everything.
Sure.
And that, that's a fun conversation to have. Now, like I said, I don't have your fancy artwork, but I do have, I do have the joy, the gift, the gab. Another fun thing too is you don't have to be doing anything. Like, nothing has to be sitting there. Like, I was teaching you guys how to podcast long before I even had a podcast.
Right.
And that was because I had the, I had the know-how, I had the knowledge. But to me, I was rammed with other things. I had different stories in my mind, things I wanted to accomplish, things that I had set out in the initial states. And I'd always said, I've got to get this going. And it's very important that people have it. But how are you to be taken seriously if you're teaching something that you're not following through with? And it's because of you guys that I said, I have to have this podcast. If I'm going to keep teaching people that this is the way to have the message out there, I need to have the message out there. And I was teaching off stat. Therefore, I was saying, these are the things that I know, obviously through Sam, all that other stuff as well. But for me, to launch and to just do it, like it's such a wonderful world to be on the other side of it. Once you cross over that it doesn't even matter. 10 podcasts, 50 podcasts, 100 podcasts, every single podcast you get better. I mean, the first podcast, ladies and gentlemen, is funny because it's just you sitting in front of a mic in front of your computer going, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah. Absolutely. 100%.
And then you're out and then you're rocking. And then, you and I know right now that there's an audience right now listening to this. They're sitting there, they're enjoying their night. And this is the entertainment that they've chosen over television. And I'm so grateful and thankful for that, to be the truth and to be the new reality in which you and I reside. I love that. Every single one of you listening right now, you are amazing. You're amazing.
100%. I mean, listen, I think about the Jim Rohn stat or piece that just says, focus on the few, right? I don't care. This one's not about going out and getting numbers. This one's about connection. This podcast, this podcast is about connecting with people who are either, on the brink of an awakening, or just kind of somewhere along their spiritual journey, or just coming along, right, for the ride. And
where do you think you are?
What do I think I am in terms of what?
On your journey right now? If I were to say, are you enlightened? If I were to say to you, on a scale of 1 to 10, how far up do you think you are?
I'm like a 3. Because there's just like you said earlier, there's so much, and I'm just barely beginning to scratch the surface, right? Where I'm just starting to scratch the surface of my own potentiality, my inner self, who or what I think the universe is, all that stuff, man. How about you? It's a good question. I like it.
Man, I say the same thing. I'm a 3, I'm a 4, and that's an ignorant statement for me to make, because that's only being able to base things off where I have been.
Right. For sure.
And I don't know how far I can go, that's why I say low. I say low because, 3 or 4 is high. 3 would be decent, but I mean, we could be at 0.2,
for sure. Right.
Or, we could be at 10. Like, this could be it. Here we are, It'd be weird if it was, because that'd be one hell of a drop off. But, I have so many more questions, and I have so many more things I want to experience, and journeys that I want to go on. I wake up every fucking morning excited, which is such a cool thing.
Here's what I'll tell you I am, though. I'm not as much about the questions so much as I am about enjoying the experience and just being.
Yeah. And that's it. But that is the question. You're living in it. That's your question right now. That's what's cool.
Yeah, it's look, it's been great. It's been perpetual. And there's been more joy and there's been more fun in it, I think, than there's been in a long time. I think you also mentioned a little bit earlier, not necessarily about societal pressures, but doing the thing that everybody says you're supposed to be doing, versus letting go of all that shit, right? And not having all that pressure. I think that's huge too.
I agree with that. Once you instead of viewing peer pressure as a pain point, you get the opportunity to view it as a lesson. It's cool. If you say to yourself, why would I be concerned about, I don't know, anything really? Why would I be concerned about this? Like, hey man, have this drink. Well, you don't drink? Like, fuck you. No. Right. Why would I be like, oh, I really should? What weakness inside me says I really need to do what Chad's doing? right? I'm going
Right.
to pick up my hacky sack and just play because my name's Chad too, right? That's, no offense to the Chads listening. That's just a running
Sorry,
gag.
Chad.
Yeah, sorry, Chad. Yeah, you know who you are. But that so funny. You can't say that name without it being funny. It is what it is, man. It is what it is, and like you said, waking up and just being like, you get this opportunity to be like, I want to learn my lessons. I want to understand why I think the way I think. I don't want to blindly accept that I think the way I think, because one of the coolest things about stepping into purpose and stepping into a higher dimension mentally and physically is that you understand that you're not having thoughts, you're experiencing them. Much like the radio isn't creating music, it's tapping into a frequency and amplifying it. It's the same as
Receiving
thoughts.
it. Yeah. Yep.
So, all that self-hate and self-doubt, you're receiving that from somewhere. Step your frequency up and you'll start receiving different messages.
Yeah, no, it's I share it a lot. I put the book out of my reach. Where is it? Power versus Force. I sent you the link actually to his like subsequent. He's got a lot of books. David R. Hawkins. I sent you that book on surrender, which is super awesome. But in that book, he's got like a map of consciousness, right? And that's kind of one of his big pieces that he's contributed, I think, to kind of where we are in what you call like the, ripping of the veil or whatever, right? The thinning of the veil, whatever you want to call it. I feel like he's contributed quite a bit to that because there's a map of consciousness, right? Here's where you are. And if you can leverage that and see where you are, you can kind of know where the next step is, which I think is really great. If you're feeling hate and anger and frustration with the world, chances are you're feeling that with yourself. All right. Yep. And how do you want to address that?
Yeah. And if the world is showing it to you, it's something you need to overcome because that's also your fault. Right. Now, I've been on the hook so many times for victim shaming. Is that the term? I don't know what it is. Where you're like Dave Chappelle. He made the joke. Oh, she got assaulted, and he's like, well, what was she wearing? I don't put myself in that category, but I get the finger pointed a lot at me for that sort of stuff because again, you can misplace humor, you can do whatever you want. The world seems to want to live in its own narrative and drag everybody else in through theirs. Sure. And for me, it's a sensitive point, but it's a certain one. Like if I'm out drinking all the time, there's a high likelihood that I'm going to get punched in the face. It may never happen, but there's certainly a higher likelihood that I'm going to get punched in the face being out drinking than if I'm having intellectual conversations with individuals. For sure. And if you love the idea of being out drinking, and if you want to get mad at me and say, well, what, you can't be drunk and have an intellectual conversation, man, you can do whatever you want, anywhere you want in life at any point. Right. But what I will say is if you want more out of life, you're going to come into certain circumstances and situations that change the way you specifically do business. And once you get to the other side of how you've done that, you can look back and say, man, I got punched in the face because I was out drunk running my mouth, Right. And that's it, which means I'm the victim of assault, but it's because I was an idiot that it happened.
You're the one who created that situation. Right. Yes,
and that's not all of them. I'm going to put this in asterisks, ladies and gentlemen. The world wants to, they just want to eat everybody alive right now. That's not every situation. That's not a blanket statement. That is an individual experience statement.
Sure. No, I get it. Right.
I feel like I have to
listen. The disclaimer, right?
Well, exactly. There's millions of people listening to this podcast right now. I know. Right.
Listen. They're huge. And I don't want an avalanche on Adam's house because he's a dick.
A spiritual dick. You bastard.
Telling you that you got punched in the face and it was totally your fault. But it is, right? You put yourself there, and look, man, there's definitely situations where people are like, well, this happened in the world and you're saying that was their fault. I'm like, come on, man. You take it with a grain of salt. You are where you and hey, that could be your soul contract, right?
Yes, that could be your soul contract. Yeah.
We don't know, man, and nobody knows. So for anybody to come up and say yay or nay, but I mean, at least in our current level of understanding and experience to date,
here's an extra step to that soul contract. It could be your soul contract to be murdered, making you the ultimate victim, right? And then, but it's not, your soul contract isn't for you or for the murderer. It's for the observers of everyone that witnessed you getting murdered. Right. And then you and the murderer soul contracted into this to wake the world up. So the murderer has to commit the heinous crime of murdering, and the victim has to be the victim of a murder. Both of them signed on to this so that you and me could witness this and change how we do life. That's how soul contracts can work as well.
For sure.
There are some extensive quantities that go into every single experience. It's mind-bendingly beautiful.
No, 100%, right? It's life, right? It's life, and I think that in itself is beautiful. Just like you, sir, are beautiful. So where can we send people to go hang out with Adam Walton?
There's a lot of changes going on, but you can check us out right now at the mentalmasteryalliance.com. All of our social links are there. Everything's there. We are just having fun with everything right now. Everything is tickety-boo. So definitely come give us a check out. If you like social media, if you don't like the computer, that's cool too. We're everywhere. We have our own podcast. All of it's linked back to the webpage. So in the liner notes of this episode, if my webpage was there, then everybody would get to see what we're all up to. And there's a ton of stuff going on. So we encourage you all to pop by. And if you don't want to do that, hey man, cool too.
Adam, thanks for stopping on today. I always enjoyed the conversation, brother.
Absolutely, my friend. Great time.